So there's this video going absolutely crazy on TikTok and YouTube right now, and honestly, when I first saw it, I had to replay it like 5 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's footage from Princess Diana's funeral back in 1997, and someone zoomed in on King Charles right before they went into Westminster Abbey. In the clip, Charles looks seriously pissed off, like genuinely angry, and he's making these hand gestures at someone. Then literally seconds later, you can see a female royal just walking away really quickly with her head down. People are losing their minds over this because it looks like Charles straight up kicked someone out of the funeral procession. Everyone's talking about who that woman was and why Charles would do that at his ex-wife's funeral in front of the whole world. The footage that's currently blowing up TikTok and YouTube allegedly comes from archival BBC coverage of Diana's funeral procession. Royal watchers on Reddit's Royals Gossip have been going absolutely crazy trying to figure out if this is legit or not. According to their deep dives into the footage, the video was supposedly spliced from the original broadcast, with someone taking the time to slow it down and zoom way in to highlight Charles's frustrated expression near the entrance of Westminster Abbey. The level of detail people are noticing is honestly kind of impressive. They're analyzing every facial fake, muscle, every hand movement, trying to piece together what was actually happening in that moment. The original broadcast moved so quickly that most viewers in 1997 probably didn't catch whatever this was, but with modern technology letting people pause, rewind, and enhance the footage, suddenly everyone's seeing things that went unnoticed for decades. The thing that's got everyone talking is Charles's body language in those few seconds. He's clearly gesturing at something or someone, and his face looks genuinely pissed off. But here's where it gets complicated. Some people are saying those gestures could have just been directed towards security or aides who were managing the massive crowd that day. Like, imagine the pressure of organizing a funeral that literally billions of people were watching. Anyone would be stressed out of their mind. What really sent the conspiracy theories into overdrive was the female royal who walks away right after Charles's apparent outburst. The internet detectives are split on who she actually was. Some believe it was Princess Margaret, Diana's former age travel sister-in-law who had a reputation for not taking crap from anyone. Others claim it was one of Queen Elizabeth's cousins, someone who allegedly wasn't afraid to criticize Charles behind closed doors. According to a discussion that went viral on the Royalty Tea Reddit community in 2025, this unnamed cousin supposedly told people privately that Charles was performing grief for the cameras, rather than actually mourning Diana. If that's true, you can imagine how tense things must have been between them. The idea that she got kicked out of the shot for not playing along with Charles's version of how the funeral should look is the kind of royal drama people eat up. Some fans have taken this even further, arguing that what we're seeing isn't just the regular BBC footage everyone's seen a million times. They think the viral clip actually merges that familiar broadcast with unseen B-roll from a secondary camera angle that was supposedly stored in royal archives for decades. The theory is that this behind-the-scenes footage leaked online for a short time before someone realized what had happened and took it down. The problem is, no major news outlet has confirmed anything about a leak like this happening. Then there's this claim from a Reddit user who says they used to work as a TV production assistant back in the day. They posted that the BBC actually removed this particular scene from their archives years ago because Charles was visibly losing patience with someone near the front pew. They suggested the network didn't want that kind of footage floating around because it made Charles look bad during what was supposed to be this solemn, unified moment of royal grief. But nobody's been able to verify this story. Not the BBC, not any media archive, nobody. Happening behind the scenes at Diana's funeral, this isn't conspiracy theory stuff. It's actually documented history. Sources like the documentary program Diana, 7 Days That Shook the Windsors, confirm that Charles, Queen Elizabeth, and Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, had some serious clashes over how the funeral should go down. The main fight was about who would walk behind Diana's coffin, and whether the whole thing should be public or private. Earl Spencer wanted certain things done his way since Diana was his sister, while the royal family had their own ideas about protocol, and tradition. These weren't just polite disagreements either. People who were there have said the arguments got pretty heated. The Spencer family felt like they were being pushed aside when it came to making decisions about their own place. Sister's funeral, while the royals thought they needed to maintain certain standards and traditions that had been followed for generations. It was this clash between personal grief and institutional protocol, with nobody really willing to back down. Because everyone thought they were doing what Diana would have wanted. Credible reports from outlets like the New Zealand Herald and interviews with royal biographers back this up completely. Charles didn't just clash with the Spencer family. He even had disagreements with Tony Blair, who was Prime Minister at the time, over the funeral logistics. The biggest question was whether this should be an intimate family affair or this massive public ceremony that the whole world could witness. The fact that these verified conflicts actually happened makes it way easier for people to believe the viral video theories. Like, if Charles was already fighting with Diana's family and the government about how things should look, it's not that crazy to think he might have snapped at someone during the actual funeral when things weren't going exactly how he wanted. Royal photographer Arthur Edwards has written about how Charles was under absolutely insane amounts of stress that day. Multiple biographers have reported that he was genuinely furious with palace staff because of logistical problems that came up the morning of the funeral. This stuff is documented, it's not made up. Whether that frustration extended to him actually telling other royals to get out of the shot is another question. But the baseline of him being angry and stressed that day is historically accurate. The funeral planning was apparently a complete nightmare from start to finish. According to testimonies from royal aides that have been shared on podcasts like A Right Royal Podcast, Charles was obsessed with how everything would look on camera. Some staff members recall him literally shouting about people blocking the shot. That was meant to focus on William and Harry as they walked behind their mother's coffin. The pressure to get everything perfect must have been insane. You're dealing with a global audience of billions, trying to honor someone who'd become the most famous woman in the world, while also managing your own complicated emotions about her death and your role in her unhappiness. Every single detail, from where people stood to how the cameras were positioned, became this massive deal because Charles understood that these images would define how history remembered not just Diana, but his entire family's response to her death. Now, this is one of those things that's plausible but hasn't been 100% confirmed by official sources. But it makes sense, right? Charles knew the whole world was watching, and he had young sons who needed to be seen handling this tragedy with dignity. If random relatives or staff were getting in the way of that image, you can imagine him losing it. The whole day was like walking this tightrope where one wrong move, one bad camera angle, one person in the wrong place at the wrong time could turn public opinion even more against the royal family than it already was. There's also this persistent theory that floats around Reddit and YouTube comment sections about Charles looking irritated when Elton John arrived. The speculation is that Charles thought the whole performance was too celebrity-driven, like it was turning Diana's funeral into some kind of concert instead of a dignified royal ceremony. There's brief footage showing Charles appearing tense around that time, which is why people believe this theory, but there's no concrete evidence he was actually mad at Elton specifically. What we do know for sure is that Charles cared deeply about the optics of that day. The question is whether he cared because he genuinely wanted to honor Diana properly, or because he was trying to control the narrative around their labor, relationship, and his role in her life. People on both sides of that argument can find evidence to support what they already believe. The logistics weren't just about camera angles and seating arrangements either. There were massive security concerns with the crowd outside, coordination issues with the church, and the challenge of managing multiple different groups who all had their own ideas about how things should go. Charles was dealing with his ex-wife's death, his son's grief, public opinion that largely blamed him for Diana's unhappiness, and a funeral that needed to satisfy both royal tradition and public demand for access. One detail that royal biographers have confirmed is that there were arguments about the route the funeral procession would take and who would be allowed where. These weren't casual discussions. They were full-on battles between different factions within the palace and the Spencer family. Every decision, from the flowers on the coffin to who got to speak, became this political minefield that Charles had to navigate while also supposedly mourning. One of the most significant absences that day was Camilla Parker Bowles. She didn't attend Diana's funeral, and that wasn't an accident or oversight. It was a deliberate decision by the royal family to avoid public backlash. At that point, everyone knew about Charles and Camilla's relationship and how it had contributed to his marriage falling apart. Having her there would have caused an absolute riot. People were already furious with Charles for how he treated Diana, and seeing his mistress at the funeral would have been like throwing gasoline on a fire. The royal family's advisors knew they were already dealing with a PR nightmare, and adding Camilla to the mix would have made things exponentially worse. So she stayed away, probably watching on TV like everyone else, while Charles faced the cameras alone. Some blogs and royal commentators have speculated that Camilla's absence actually contributed to Charles's emotional strain that day. The theory is that he was dealing with Diana's death while also being unable to have his actual partner there for support because of public opinion. Whether that's true or just people reading too much into things, it's an interesting angle that shows how complicated the whole situation was. But Camilla wasn't the only notable absence or awkward moment involving other royals. Going back to that female royal who walked away in the viral video, whether she was Princess Margaret or someone else, her quick exit has become this symbolic moment that people use to argue the family wasn't as united as they appeared. There's this one YouTube commenter who claimed without any real evidence that Queen Elizabeth turned away, muttering "not here" after Charles's supposed outburst. There's literally no verified footage or transcript that supports this, but the comment got thousands of likes because it fits the narrative people want to believe. It's emotionally appealing to think the Queen was trying to keep Charles in check, telling him to save the drama for later. The absence of certain royals from specific shots or moments has been analyzed frame by frame by online conspiracy theorists. They've connected these absences to older narratives from the Panorama interview era, suggesting Charles deliberately created distance from certain family members to control the public image of grief. The idea is that he wanted the cream did focus on him and his sons, with everyone else either supporting that image or being pushed out of frame. This is where things get really wild, and we have to be clear about what's speculation versus what's real. Recent posts on communities like Royalty Tea and the Crown Netflix subreddit have introduced what they call the quote, EAIF spiritual guilt theory. This suggests that Charles's visible frustration during the funeral wasn't about controlling optics at all. It was actually an emotional collapse disguised as anger. Basically, they argue his irritation and snapping at people was really just guilt eating him alive, and anger was the only way he knew how to express it. The theory goes that Charles was so messed up emotionally, dealing with Diana's death, his son's grief, public hatred toward him, and his own complicated feelings about their failed marriage, that he couldn't process it all in a healthy way. So instead of crying or breaking down, he got angry at little things because that was easier than facing the real emotions underneath. There's zero evidence for this psychological analysis, but it's become popular because it adds this layer of tragic complexity to Charles's character. Instead of being the controlling villain who's stage managing his ex-wife's funeral, he becomes this broken man who can't even process his own emotions properly. It makes him more human and sympathetic, which is probably why people like this interpretation, even though there's nothing to back it up. Then there's this absolutely insane claim that went viral about Diana's earrings. According to this story, Charles supposedly noticed that one of Diana's earrings was missing before the coffin left London. He allegedly demanded that someone find it immediately and stormed off in a rage when they couldn't locate it right away. This detail has been shared thousands of times, but there is literally no official report, no witness testimony, no anything to back it up. It's pure online mythology. What makes these conspiracy theories stick around is that they get mixed with real facts. For example, Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, did actually accuse the royal family of a plot during the 2008 inquest into Diana and Dodi's deaths. That's documented fact, but modern conspiracy channels have taken his real statements from that inquest and spliced them into videos alongside the new viral edit, implying Charles's guilt in a way that's super misleading. They'll show Al-Fayed making his accusations, then cut to the footage of Charles looking angry at the funeral, then back to more of Al-Fayed's testimony. It creates this narrative flow that makes it seem like everything's connected, even though the problem won't be done. Inquest concluded there was no conspiracy, and the deaths were caused by the drunk driver and paparazzi chase. Some of the wilder theories floating around suggest Charles was angry because he knew certain royals were about to leak information to the press after the funeral, or that he was trying to prevent specific people from being photographed with William and Harry because of custody concerns, or that the whole outburst was about Prince Philip saying something inappropriate that Charles didn't want picked up by the microphones. None of these have any basis in reality, but they all get hundreds of comments from people convinced they figured out the real truth. The problem with all this speculation is that it takes kernels of truth, like Charles being stressed, or there being real conflicts about the funeral planning, and builds these massive conspiracy narratives on top of them. People forget where the bod documented facts end and the creative interpretation begins. What's really interesting is how this viral video has reignited anti-monarchist debate across social media. Younger generations who weren't even alive in 1997 are seeing this footage and using it as evidence that the royal family's unity during Diana's funeral was basically all fake, just stage-managed theater for the cameras. They're looking at this moment and seeing proof of everything they already suspected about the monarchy, that it's all about appearances and control, with real human emotions taking a backseat to maintaining the right image for the public. For people who grew up in an age where authenticity is valued above almost everything else, the idea that Charles might have been directing people's positions during his ex-wife's funeral feels especially gross and fake. The trending hashtag number kicking out royals isn't just about analyzing old footage anymore. It's become this rallying cry for people who've always been skeptical of the monarchy as an institution. They're arguing that if Charles was willing to control who got to publicly grieve his ex-wife based on how it would look, what else has the royal family been controlling and manipulating over the years? This taps into long-standing distrust toward the institution that goes way beyond Diana's death. People bring up everything from how the family handled Meghan Markle to the Prince Andrew scandal, using the viral funeral footage as just one more piece of evidence that the royals care more about image than authenticity. The video has particularly resonated on TikTok, where younger users who grew up watching The Crown are now seeing what they think is proof that the show's dramatic interpretations weren't that far off from reality. Comment sections are full of people saying things like, "I always knew Charles was controlling," or "This is why the monarchy needs to end." The discussion has moved beyond just analyzing this one moment to questioning the entire institution's relevance in modern society. People are asking why anyone should respect a family that apparently couldn't even be genuine during one of the most public tragedies in recent history. The funeral was supposed to be this moment of national unity and shared grief. But if Charles was really orchestrating it like a stage production, what does that say about the royal family's values and priorities? What's fascinating is how the same footage means completely different things to different people. Royal supporters see a stressed man dealing with an impossible situation under the most intense scrutiny imaginable. Critics see a calculated manipulator orchestrating his ex-wife's funeral like a PR event, caring more about optics than honest emotion. Both groups are looking at the exact same few seconds of video and coming away with totally opposite conclusions. It's like one of those optical illusions where some people see a duck and others see a rabbit. Your interpretation probably says more about what you already believed about Charles and the royals than about what's actually happening in the footage. The debate has spread to mainstream media too, with think pieces about whether the monarchy can survive in the age of social media where nothing stays hidden forever. The idea that some random person can dig up or enhance old footage and completely change the conversation about historical events is both powerful and kind of terrifying, depending on your perspective. It means that moments the royal family thought were safely in the past can suddenly become relevant again, reinterpreted through a modern lens with modern technology revealing details that weren't visible before. The control that institutions like the monarchy once had over their own narrative is basically gone now, and this viral video is a perfect example of that shift in power. Royal commentators who support the family have pushed back hard, arguing that people are reading way too much into a few seconds of footage taken completely out of context. They point out that billions of people watched that funeral live and nobody at the time reported Charles kicking anyone out or having some kind of meltdown. If something that dramatic had actually happened, wouldn't someone have mentioned it in the immediate aftermath when reporters were dissecting every detail of the day? The counterargument is that the media was protecting the royals back then, unwilling to report on conflicts or drama during such a sensitive moment. Only now, with social media giving everyday people the ability to analyze and share footage, can we supposedly see what the traditional media chose to ignore or hide. The whole situation has become this weird test case for how historical events get reinterpreted through modern technology and changing social attitudes. What seemed like a unified moment of national mourning in 1997 now looks to many people like a carefully controlled performance with cracks showing around the edges. So here we are, nearly 3 decades after Diana's death, still arguing about what really happened that day and what it means for the royal family's credibility. The viral video, whether it shows what people think it shows or not, has given everyone a new reason to pick their side and debate the nature of the monarchy itself. But stepping back from all the conspiracy theories and online speculation, we're left with some genuinely unsettling questions about that footage. If Charles really did gesture angrily at someone to leave the frame during his ex-wife's funeral, who exactly was he trying to remove and why? Was it really Princess Margaret, a woman who'd known him his entire life, being told to step aside during one of the most watched moments in modern history? Or was it one of the Queen's relatives, who dared to question his performance of grief? And if the BBC really did scrub this footage from their archives, like that anonymous production assistant claimed, what other moments from that day have been quietly erased to protect the image of a man who would eventually become king? The fact that we're asking these questions at all, that millions of people are convinced they've seen proof of something the palace never wanted us to see, shows just how fragile the carefully constructed image of royal unity really was, and maybe still is.